All right. Hello, welcome. This is the Gamer 2.0, and today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to do something that's a little bit more of like a creative corner where I kind of go back and talk about some previous work that I had done with some manga based artworks. I've got a lot of stuff that I've been like kind of working on. I've had multiple different projects that I've worked on. If you kind of want to see just a general idea of the different things that I have worked on, um, I'm going to go ahead and just throw up the other YouTube channel that I had before, which is just plain manga. And with this one, kind of has like everything that we're going to cover today, with one of the first demos that I had initially released. And the reason why I wanted to do that was just because it's something that I had worked on a while ago. I mean, multiple years ago. And unfortunately, due to certain situations changing and certain things happening, I was kind of unable to really continue this as much as I wanted to. I'm gonna go ahead and throw out that the artwork was all done by um, well, his pen name is Ambrose Robertson, but all the artwork was done by him. Um, I I basically paid him to create a lot of the images. When it came to actually like writing and doing any kind of like panel construction or panel work, so basically like what size panels should be, where they should be located, I did a lot of that myself. I just kind of had asked him to do the actual artwork. So one of the things I do kind of want to um, go through is the Knight of Stone, what the Knight of Stone is, a little bit about the world, um, just kind of some background story about it. Just kind of go through, just talk a little bit about, again, something that I've done in the past. So I'm going to go ahead, just throw up. This was the first panel, or the first page of the demo that I released. I released, I think it was a total of like 4 or 5 demos, and each of the demos were just basically kind of kind of plopped in a point where things are kind of they're in their own sense a little bit more of a uh, like an action style kind of thing where kind of important story points would happen, but it wasn't like the end all be all. It was never really like the beginning of the story. It was more along the lines of like typically like a little bit after we had actually kind of gotten to know some of the characters a little bit. And with this one particularly, I decided to do this one because I'm a big fan of like Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop games, that kind of stuff. And because of that, like a lot of times I would create the characters that I would like to see, and then what I would do is I would go back and I would say, okay, how did this character kind of come about? Like, how did this character end up becoming part of the world? What sequence of events would have made him or made them become who they are and act how they do? So one of the characters is going to be this guy right here, um, who is the Knight of Stone. The Knight of Stone kind of starts out as the actual story starts out as him being a child and kind of running through his training to become a knight. He starts as a squire, training under one of the most powerful knights in the kingdom that they live in, basically. And the reason why is because he has his he has like lineage that traces back to like magical elements. The whole thing is based on like high fantasy, that kind of stuff. And what this really talks about is just kind of the idea of duty, honor, um, and the different things that you kind of have to like suffer through um, when you seek power through control, more or less, or seek power through self-preservation, self-control. And I did this so that the Knight of Stone would have a reason as to why he wanted to travel, a reason why he wanted to become powerful. He wasn't just becoming powerful because he wanted to be the best or anything like that. He has a specific reason. So the whole thing behind the Knight of Stone here is that um, he's seeking power not for himself. He's not seeking power to protect others. He's actually seeking power in order to reunite with his father. Um, his father is a half genie, uh, which the reason why I made him a half genie was because it kind of ties into the idea that there's different planes, and each like elemental plane has its own specific space. Each plane of like light and darkness has its own specific space, and each of these places kind of contain like the life energy that ultimately makes up the material plane or the neutral plane. So um, his father is a half genie because he's someone that is basically from outside of the neutral plane or outside of the material plane, and he comes seeking kind of his roots because his father was a human, his mother was a Dao or a Shaitan, depending on like how you kind of like describe the genie name. Uh, and the whole thing is that like as he stays in the material world, he ends up becoming more powerful than he can actually contain himself, to the point where in his sleep, when he has like a wife and a child, all of a sudden he's like pulling earth from the earth plane into the material unconsciously. And because of that, he can't really afford to stay around his family, so he has to leave out of necessity. He doesn't leave because he's a bad person or he like just doesn't want to be there. And the whole thing of seeking power is because he needs to become powerful enough to where he can visit and see his father. He can go back and he can actually have that strength to be able to stand and more or less be with his father, because his mother is actually strong enough. She has like her whole own situation going on, but he's seeking a way to where if he wasn't weak, his father could return and they could live together as a family rather than his father having to leave and having to try to support them from afar. Because even though he's not currently like in the house with them, he still does things like adventuring, solving problems in other places. It's just he can't be in a place that is near people that he cares about, because again he's having trouble controlling his own strength, his own power, without it bleeding into the material world. So I designed kind of like the knight to actually start back. Let me see here. Um, and so he actually starts back more as a child here. Um, Floyd was just kind of a working name. It wasn't a full like this is finalized kind of thing. And the reason why I chose Floyd was just because it was something that was more along the lines of it had a meaning specifically tied to Earth and stuff like that. So that's why I chose that specific name for the work in progress, because you know it's a little more. I'm not really good with naming specific characters, but he would be more known by his title rather than uh, his specific name. And then we also had Oscar here. Oscar is the one who actually trains him to become a knight. He is the knight that takes in the Knight of Stone as a squire. Trains him on how to fight, how to actually utilize his own strength for himself, because the half genie lineage does actually give him far greater strength than a normal person, and that's because again he's bound to the earth. So because he's bound to the earth, he has naturally stronger resistances and that kind of stuff. So the reason why I kind of chose to have like a straight knight versus like another magic user or anything like that, because the Knight of Stone does utilize magic. He does utilize that kind of stuff. But the whole point behind him was that the Knight of Stone should not rely solely upon magic. It should be something that's more physically oriented, to where it actually would make sense as him being a knight. And the reason why the whole like knight situation kind of came about was because I was thinking, well, what do I want to do with a magic user? Because I want the world to have magic, and the main character should be able to use magic in some form or fashion. So, but the thing is that magic shouldn't always be like the crux or the way that problems are solved. And as I was thinking about that, I was like, well, the person who trains him should be someone that could also use magic, as Oscar is more of like a paladin style character where he does have access to holy magic and things like that, but he chooses use not to use magic specifically because it's not something that should be like a crux or something that you should seek to solve all your problems with. It should be something that is ancillary or a tool. It's not something that you solve all issues just by simply throwing magic at it. And with that, it's just one of those things where it's kind of questioning, how much magic is necessary in a world that actually uses it versus how much should someone rely on their own strength or their own body in order to make certain things happen. And I use Oscar as more of a tool to basically train not only the hero but also provide him with the opportunity to have some self-reliance, some self-sustenance, where he's not, because he comes to him as a very very young child. So because if we take a look back here at when he starts, he starts as a very young boy, so he's not like someone who knows how to take care of himself. He's not someone that really understands the world around him. And so Oscar's kind of meant to be that mentor, that tutor, that person that brings him to the point where he can become more than what he is. He can become stronger than what he is. And he doesn't end up relying solely on magic. We do actually also have kind of here the rough sketches of when the initial thing kind of was being set up. This isn't the demo page. This is actually more of when we started kind of getting into like the first chapters and that kind of stuff. So when we got into like the first chapter kind of thing, he would basically go and I would give him the scripts, and then the panel layout of how I wanted the panels kind of structured, where I wanted everything kind of happening, and kind of what was going to be happening within those panels. So we can actually take a look here and see just kind of like it's a very rough sketch. It's like, does this look good? Is this kind of where you want everything? And as I kind of look through, I'm like, yeah, I mean, like everything kind of looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step. When we would move on to the next step, we would kind of get something like this, where like a little bit more details are being filled in, a little bit more life is being brought into the pages itself. And then as we kind of got towards the end, we started getting things like this, where we had like the little sound effects, little like black and white paintings basically, and everything kind of started coming into structure. And then this was the actual like final result, where we actually had a little bit more. But he actually noticed that her stockings actually were not covered in or colored in, so he had to go back and he had to color in her stockings. But this was just kind of like the steps that we took to kind of create the full picture here. And it's one of those things where hold on, am I not streaming to a certain place? Because only showing 4:4. Okay, Twitch, Rumble. Am I not streaming it onto X? Let me take a look here, because for some reason it doesn't look right. Yeah. But as we kind of went through, we decided basically like how to kind of structure everything and how to get everything kind of properly placed. I would give him the full script of the page, just do certain things like proofreading it or things like that, just to make sure like everything's kind of working well. Oh, it looks like I lost my audio there. Let me see here. See if I can pull that back up. There we go. So with this, it all kind of comes into the framing of who these characters tend to be, who they become, and how they start. So one of the things that we see here is we actually see his childhood friend that eventually, when we come back to the actual first panel, like they've grown up together, they've become teenagers together. One, because the reason why they ended up together was because the Knight of Stone went to train under the Grinning Knight, or Oscar, because Oscar's title is the Grinning Knight. And then she went there not too long after, but it's not because she was going there to train. She's actually someone who focuses more on actual, like, practical magic and things like that, where it's more studied and more practiced. Whereas the Knight of Stone channels the magic more naturally, but it's singular elemental focused. Whereas hers is more multi elemental focused because she's studying on how to manipulate magic and other things naturally through study, practice, and application. So she came in to be under the protection of Oscar because Oscar was basically very close friends with her father, who was a court mage, or the king of the kingdom that they lived in. And the reason why this kind of comes about is because the court mage is actually engaging in negotiations with another powerful bloodline house of fire users. And the fire users are not only an old house, but they're also very, very powerful. So the whole thing comes down to, how do we keep someone who is obviously very young safe during the negotiations, so that, because obviously if they take her, kidnap her, or whatever, they have extra leverage that they can kind of pose against the court wizard, and it becomes more difficult for them to get a fair deal versus one that is swayed over to the house's side. So that's actually kind of where the demo is taking place. The demo is taking place kind of at a point where we have the house kind of starting to take action, because they've been stalling for multiple years trying to get things to a point where they could have better negotiations, better leverage, and more opportunities to really know kind of who they're dealing with, the kingdom that's seeking their help or seeking to get them to join them. And so that's why we actually have this traveling scene where the Knight of Stone and his childhood friends are traveling with a carriage, and the man that we see here is actually the same man that we see driving the cart here, just when he's younger. And this is just kind of the character that has always driven her, that has always kind of taken care of her, because obviously with her living off and under someone else's protection, she doesn't really get to see her father. She doesn't really get to see her mother or live in the luxury that she did before. So when we actually see her kind of come in here, this is when she's very, very spoiled, where she doesn't really know a lot about life or kind of what's happening in the world around her. She just knows that she's being taught how to use magic, and she kind of has that natural characteristic of, well, I'm better than other people because I can do something that other people really don't have an opportunity to. And this is kind of where magic becomes one of those things that separates like the rich and the poor. And the rich, obviously, like, they have the means to go through and really teach people how to use magic because they're not struggling day to day. They're not seeking food or resources like during the day, so they actually have the time to sit down, study, and actually learn magic. Whereas like the poor people, they don't really have that same luxury. They can't afford the books, they can't afford a lot of the different things that kind of happen or that need to happen in order for them to become magic users. So a lot of times you'll see magic users from noble houses or lineages. That's the only way that they really can get access to magic, whereas like the rich can study it, they can specialize, they can do things like that. So that's kind of where the separation comes in, where you have more or less like a princess without her being an actual princess. She is someone that is of a high noble station, but isn't actually related to the king, isn't actually related to anyone that holds like authority or land over someone else. But she is someone that has spent a lot of time studying and researching and learning about how to use magic because her family is actually very well off. We'll go ahead and we'll start here with with like the demo page. And the demo page is it's a full 8 pages. But the demo page here is more to really kind of let us understand a little bit more about kind of like what we're dealing with, the world that we're in, and kind of how that all um, comes and culminates into the singular point. So let's take a look back here, and so we have the traveling, and then as the traveling, she's obviously very anxious. He's very very stoic, very controlled. Where she basically says, you know, is there something that you would like to say? Is there something that you want to tell me? Um, and he kind of brings up, congratulations on your upcoming marriage. Looks like we crossed the bridge and are heading into the Phoenix House's territory. The Phoenix House is the obviously the house that they're negotiating with, and that this is supposed to kind of imply that she's being used as a bargaining chip to get them to join by having her marry into the house. So her destiny is already kind of being put into place for her. She doesn't really have that choice. And so she's at this point trying to find something that she can do to escape, because she's been living with the Knight of Stone. Well, the Knight of Stone and Oscar. And she doesn't want to like have she's been having like this opportunity to have freedom and have a life of her own and act the way that she wants to and do the things that she wants to. But now this is all changing with her becoming basically a token piece of someone else's marriage, and she doesn't really have control over it because again, she's like in that noble position. She's not in a position where she really has a lot of freedom to make the choices for herself. She's in that position that, you know, you're doing what you're told because this is what's the benefit for everyone, not just yourself. And so then we kind of take a look into the second page, where she kind of is making the desperate plea that, you know, I know you hate this as much as I do. After all this time, you never admitted to me how you felt. And he said, I did my duty protecting you, that's all. Just to where he's trying to distance himself because she's seeking like some kind of attention from him, some kind of like admission of romantic feelings, because she's being married off, but they've spent so much time together, so there has to be some kind of feelings, there has to be something going on. But he has like kind of his own mindset of like what he's doing, where he's going, and so it becomes kind of like this counterpoint where, you know, like really what's happening here. So she kind of comes back and she says, you know, we can take this carriage and go anywhere, become adventurers, you know, and live freely by our own rules. And he just responds, you know, we both have obligations we need to carry out. And so she then goes in to try to kiss him to say, you know, tell me the same thing after this, to which we see like the rumbling has kind of stopped in that panel, to which he kind of notices it, and he basically like jumps out to see what's going on, why they stopped. And he asked directly to the character, I named him Cecil. He's just kind of the carriage driver, but he says, you know, like, wait, why have the carriage stopped? And she sees that he's like basically like running out of the situation and saying like, you can't just leave in the middle of the conversation, you can't just leave, you know, before I've said what I had to say. And this just kind of demonstrates the fact that she's trying to tempt him out of the duty. She's trying to tempt him out of doing what he's supposed to do, because doing what he's supposed to do is taking her to a fate that she can't control. And she's desperate while he's trying to do the morally correct thing of, well, it may not be what you want, but this is what we need to do in order for things to progress the way that they should be. And so we actually see in the next panel here why we have kind of stopped here, as he comes up and he asks Cecil here, something wrong? Again, I hadn't named him at this point. Again, I'm not great with individual character names, but he asks him what's wrong, and Cecil tells him there's a blockade in the road. We cannot take the carriage through. And we kind of see that there's like a small gang of bandits here that says, so he says, well, we are expected to be coming into these lands. Please let us through. Just so that they have the opportunity to walk away before there's any kind of fight. But they say, oh, we have been expecting you. Now hand over the valuable cargo, because they've been told that something valuable would be coming through here, something that's worth money, or something that's worth some kind of like leverage, or just something that could actually get them money. And so the Knight of Stone tells the driver, I'm going to ask you to return. We can walk from here. And of course, with her, with the childhood friend still being kind of, she's kind of grown past like the very like princess style attitude at this point, but she still doesn't want to like have to like do manual labor or things like that, because she's never really been forced to do manual labor or walk great distances or things like that. She normally has had her carriage kind of take her places. So she's like, I don't want to walk the rest of the way. There's still, like that we can just like clean this up and we can kind of move on. But he does come back and say, I can't protect both you and the carriage with horses. We should only be about 2 hours away. And she kind of struggles a little bit, but fights him back and just says, fine, whatever. And this is kind of to show that they've kind of come to a point where they're at this point where like they have like an equal understanding. They actually have a relationship where he'll make like a logical point and she'll be like, fine, whatever, like I don't want to argue about this, we'll just do it. And this kind of comes in with Oscar as well, because Oscar becomes kind of that point that introduces her to how to become more of an adult by being like an actual authority figure over her, because as a child she doesn't really have that. When she's a kid, she doesn't really have that, because again, as a noble house, she's waited on hand and foot. She has servants, she has people that constantly are there to serve her. And when she goes to live with Oscar doesn't have servants. Even though he's a knight, even though he is of like a nobility status, he doesn't have servants. And it's because he's very much he very much believes that things should be done as they can be by the person that they should be done by. So she ends up having to kind of start taking care of herself and start having to have things, instead of being done for her, being done by her. So she starts becoming like more of an adult, just because she can't really rely on the servants that kind of come through, do things for her, without her herself being someone that kind of can't do things for her on her own. So then we kind of come up to the next page here, where one of the bandits points her out and says, I know her, that's Madeline the Firehearted. She's the daughter of the king's advisor. And the bandits kind of say, well, I guess we found our valuable cargo, because they weren't sure exactly what they were looking for, but now they know that she's what they were actually supposed to be grabbing, in order for them to have some kind of leverage, because she is the daughter of the king's advisor. She has political weight. So we actually kind of move down to where the Knight of Stone just kind of comes out and doesn't really want to have direct conflict. So he says, I'm sure we can peacefully come to an understanding, just let us through, and we won't tell anyone that you are here. Because at this point he realizes that these people aren't working for the Phoenix House. They actually are bandits. They're actually looking for they're looking for things to steal and to rob and things like that. So the bandits, obviously having them vastly outnumbered, says, you won't be telling anyone anything, because we're going to kill you here and take the girl. Pincushion, take him out. So the guy with the bow takes a shot at him, and this is kind of where we start to see the Knight of Stone really demonstrate his magical ability, his magical prowess. And this is kind of where we start kind of to understand that he's not just someone who has been focusing on fighting with the strength of his arms, but also fighting with magic as well. So we actually kind of see the first elements here, where we see the background kind of coming into play, where the half-genie father kind of starts really demonstrating kind of like that earth style of magic. Let me see here. Just need to take a look here because it looks like, no, that is the correct page. All right. So then we come up to the next page, and we see that he's actually starting to condense rocks into an actual shield that he actually holds up, and the arrow just kind of bounces off. And the leader kind of starts barking out orders to the rest of the bandits, saying, "You guys get her. We'll take care of him." Trying to split his attention from protecting her to taking care of the girl. So the two manage to slip by him and say, "We got her." And she actually starts showing her side of the magical capabilities, which is, again, someone that has studied magic and has implanted magic into physical items. So she actually uses a repulsion field to push them away, so that way she no longer has to worry about them coming after her. So she has learned some form of self-preservation, some form of self-defense, to where she's not a completely helpless person. She actually has the ability to do certain things that even the Knight of Stone wouldn't really be able to. And this is to demonstrate how she isn't just like this weak damsel, this person that needs protecting, but someone that can actually protect herself, and someone that does have the capability of self-defense. And I always believe that the whole thing of magic is something that really is kind of like an equalizer between the male and female aspect, where you don't just have someone that is just strong with magic. Both sides, both men and women, can be equally powerful, depending on how they train, they specifically seek to utilize magic. So we actually start moving into the next panel here, or the next page, where he begins forming a sword. So it's not just armor, it's not just defense. He actually has the ability to form offense. So that's why we have the two bandits here basically saying, take his left side. He can't stop both of us. So they're going to try to pincer him to where he can't use the shield to stop them. Only he has to use the sword and the shield. So the sword is, again, super condensed rock. So it's supposed to basically be something to where the hardness is not something that's easy to break. But because he doesn't really have time to focus on the sword and build up the actual density that he needs, it's more or less more of a regular sword. But it is strong enough to actually destroy metal, and he uses a shield to actually just kind of bash another guy in the face. So they kind of start seeing that things aren't really going well for them, and so they tell the magic user that's with them to grab her, to just go past him, just to grab her so they can get out of here. And he opens up a portal, and he reaches half of his body through to come through and grab her. Because again, at this point, he's taken out two of them, she's taken out two of them, so they're kind of starting to run a little bit low on the number side. So they need to kind of figure out how they're going to get past it, which is when you have Napper kind of come through, and then he uses something called the Curse of Eternal Midnight. And this basically puts her to sleep, because it's supposed to be like eternal midnight, like eternal nighttime. So it puts a curse on them to basically perpetually fall asleep. And so the Knight of Stone sees that he's got a hold of her, and so he uses the ability Earth's Flow to sink himself into the earth so that he can actually travel through the earth and teleport directly to where where the other mage is, so that he can actually protect her. Because he's not just, again, someone who's going to use only the strength of his arms, but also utilizing some magic as well, but not completely reliant on it. And that's kind of where we kind of end up with our final page, where he erupts out of the ground and basically cleaves the guy in two. And it turns out that the guy actually wasn't a real person. It was just a simulacrum, or a copy of a person that was made out of fire. And so he has kind of like the armor here I'm not really a huge fan of that specific set of armor. Like the artist, I think did a good job of like trying to convey what I was trying to have him convey with armor. But I gotta say, like, it didn't really like meet like the specific ideals of like what I had. But the guy was willing to work with me, so because of that, I was paying him. But because of that, I still kind of I was just like, okay, you know, like it's fine. But it wasn't something that I really wanted to like kind of fight with him on. Um, as I kind of saw something that was a little bit more standard when it came to how the armor was set up or how the armor looked. But this is what we had. Again, this was just a demo. This wasn't something that was supposed to be like a finalized product. But so he basically says that he's a simulacrum of flame, to which he explodes, and the explosion of his top half is protected by the Knight of Stone, so that he can cover the girl. But the bandit leader is not so lucky. So when he looks, he notices that she's been cursed because there is a mark or a symbol of the curse. And then we have Pincushion here, who's just kind of like bagging out because he realizes, okay, yeah, there's nothing really I can do here. The leader's gone, the magic user's gone, all of his backup is gone. So it's just, and he's also seen the Knight of Stone actually teleport. So yeah, there's no way that he's going to be able to do anything relatively impactful in this situation. So he just kind of bags out. He's just like, I'm done. I'm out of here. Um, as the Knight of Stone carries Madeline, and basically kind of just makes the joke, well, you know, I guess you don't have to walk the rest of the way, at least, as she's passed out, she's asleep from the curse. But he's hoping that when he gets to the house of powerful magic users, will be able to at least cure her, because she's at this point, again, supposed to be like a marriage kind of thing. So she's actually going there to get married anyway, and so they should have something that they can do to help her specifically. And so that's kind of the end of that um, that demo. That was just to kind of demonstrate like what we were kind of looking at, like what we kind of wanted to do, like where we were kind of going with it. And eventually we did end up working with a full chapter, because I wanted to do like 3 or 4 demos just to kind of have different things. Because if we look at the videos here, we have the playlist, so we have like multiple different things going on. So we have the Knight of Stone, which was the very first one, and then we have the Mask of Power, which is the second one. The Mask of Power was a little bit more of like a superhero fantasy kind of thing, but more like modern day rather than high fantasy. The Iron Bear is another one that is going to be a little bit more high fantasy, a little bit more functionally about a we'll probably get into that one later. Those Who Were Forgotten, that was a little bit more sci-fi. Then we actually start going into the full chapters. We have chapter 1 of the Knight of Stone, the Hand of the Dead Man, which is another demo, and then we also have the Mask of Power. We had a chapter 1 for that, and then I do also have a chapter 2 for the Knight of Stone. So I've got we worked on this for a couple of years, and it just didn't end up panning out just due to financial situations and different things kind of not working in our favor. But again, if you wanna check out any of this stuff, it's just plain manga. But we can actually kind of take a look back here, and this is kind of how the artist kind of did our character creation, more or less, with like the individual characters and like character references. So he would give me like different body types and ask me to, like, which body type did I want for the character to have, and then he asked me like what kind of outfit would more suit them, the kind of hair that they wanted, the different types of faces. I told him specifically that she was supposed to have a messenger bag, and the messenger bag would have a symbol on it, because it was supposed to be kind of like a bag of holding. that was enchanted, and so like the symbol would appear just kind of on the bag itself. And then on it had like the rune, and the rune was more along the lines of like the magical enchantment element to show that it was a magical item rather than just a simple messenger bag. Let me see here. Then we actually have Madeline as a child. So this is when we decided to go back. We have like the bag and everything. We have how everything was structured, the different, the clothing, the front back view, just like her reference to an adult and how tall she was. Then we have the Knight of Stone himself when he's a child, and we just kind of have like the different weaponry. Again, I would prefer like the weaponry kind of look a little bit more as the weapons should, because it's supposed to be like super condensed stone. It's not supposed to be like just like rock pieces. It's supposed to be like you take the stone and you condense it down into like a very, very dense point to where when you swing it, you're not just swinging the sword as a sword. You're swinging the sword as kind of like a sword club hybrid, where the weight of the sword itself is actually going against the opponent as well. And by condensing, a fair amount of rock, you would end up getting like a very, very heavy sword that normally couldn't be used or wielded. But the fact that he used earth magic was actually what created the ability for him to wield it, because he was actually wielding it more as a, like, I'm gonna swing, but the sword, I'm actually not swinging it the sword, I'm actually swinging the magic aura that's around the sword that's actually guiding the sword, so that a much heavier sword was actually just more of like a normal common sword. But as a kid, he doesn't really have access to the stone weaponry yet, and so he was actually kind of gonna start out with just some basic weapons, basic tools. And then we actually have him when he's a teenager. And again, the rock armor, the rock weaponry, that was again stuff that we would probably work on a little bit more, just to kind of get that more defined down to where we kind of wanted it. And then we have the teenage version of Madeline. So she still has the same bag and the magic rune, but the difference is that she actually has a strap clip, which was supposed to be a birthday gift from when the Knight of Stone actually started developing his magical abilities, and he couldn't really do a whole lot, and so this was just kind of like the very, very basic of like, I'm gonna take a rock and I'm gonna like smash it down into like something that can just be like clipped onto the bag. And then as he kind of got a little better at it, he gifted her the brooch, and the brooch was supposed to be something that had like a small like gemstone in the center of it, to again show his growth in his own magic, where she sought to develop and enhance her own. And it was supposed to be kind of like this like gauge of like, well, he doesn't actually have the romantic feelings for her, and she's actually kind of aware of that. But when she kind of went to her mother for help, because she didn't want to get married off, she didn't want to be tied to someone else. And when she went to her mother, she said, well, is there someone else that possibly loves you? And she says, well, I have someone that like I've grown up with, and we've like lived together as as more or less friends. And she says, well, maybe there's something more there, and maybe you should try seducing him to get him to do what you want. And her mother is a little bit more of that type of person, where it's a little bit more like, utilize your looks, utilize your leverage, utilize whatever you can to get what you want. And that's how she ended up being someone that was married to the court advisor of the king. And that's the reason why she ends up trying to kiss the Knight of Stone, was not because she truly loves him or because she really wants to. It's the whole thing of, this is a possible escape. This is a possible escape from the life that is tied to someone I don't even know, someone that I don't truly love, someone that I have no idea of who they are, how they are, or what. And the life of kind of being like that token piece of, well, they only want to marry me because I'm specifically gonna give them a direct tie directly to the royal court, so that they have possibilities of becoming um, royalty later on in the future. So it's not really someone that is really looking to get married to her because of the person she is. They're looking to get married to her because of her station, because of what she is. So that kind of like boils down to the fact of like where, like, is she in the wrong or is she in the right? Like what is like the real situation there, where she kind of has to question, do I do this because I want to, or do I do this because this is going to keep me out of um, out of a bad situation, or out of a situation that I have no control over. So we also have like a couple of the little things, such as I did ask him to commission some set pieces here. And so for Madeline, when we have her as young, this is kind of what we have, where she's like digging through her bag and she's trying to find a specific item, and she's kind of frantic, and she's again at the younger stage where she doesn't really have that that calmness or that collectedness yet. And so it's just to kind of show that she's not really sure about herself. She doesn't really have a lot that she really knows about. So we also do have one with Floyd, or the Knight of Stone as well. Again, I'm not really like I did pick the name Floyd, but it was just because it was just something that I saw that specifically referred back to stone, or referred back to earth. So when we had the Knight of Stone here as a child, this was when he was supposed to use like a regular sword and shield. So he just kind of used the shield to kind of protect himself, as the sword would be kind of more of a defensive tool, as he was training to become a knight. He was a squire at this time, working living under Oscar. So I think from there we can actually kind of jump into the first chapter of the story, where we kind of take a look at where everything kind of starts. And the Knight of Stone is supposed to start in the childhood phase, when you have Madeline and the Knight of Stone actually initially having their very first meetup. And that's why we have this section here, where we have the Knight of Stone in the back here as he's pumping water, as he's just become a knight for Oscar here. And Madeline comes rolling up with her carriage that she always rides around in. And the Grinning Knight here, Oscar, is very well aware of Cecil, because Cecil was also the carriage driver for the wizard who becomes the king's advisor. And they knew each other back in the day, and so because of that, he's aware of Cecil, and Cecil's aware of him. And so, he says, it's good to see you well. How's your back doing? Because he has like some chronic back problems where, obviously sitting a lot without a lot of good back support can cause some problems. And so he says, it's better, but not as bad as it was. I've been begging Lord, and then he kind of gets cut off as Madeline just like jumps out of the carriage. Again, the typical spoiled princess, and just starts like bombarding him with questions, just like, so you're the Grinning Knight? How? Why are you so tall? Why did my father told me so many stories about you? Did you really fight a minotaur by yourself? Were you scared? Do you have any trophies? Where it's just like someone who's meeting like their idol for the first time just kind of jumps out and is like, let me just like unload a whole bunch of questions on you. As she's been kind of like brought up with the Grinning Knight as like this mythical figure, this person of like greatness that shines over other people. And so she's really kind of like trying to like just understand like what's going on, like how like she sees him as more than a person. She doesn't realize that he's actually just like a regular person at first, and so she just starts throwing questions at him. So of course, like he's going to be caught off guard by this, but he says, "Yes. Speaking of your father, did he come with you? I wasn't expecting any visitors today, so her showing up is kind of abrupt, and it's not really something that was planned." And this kind of is meant to demonstrate that. And then she opens up her pack and she says, "No, he asked me to give you this letter. I don't know why he didn't just have a messenger do it, but I couldn't resist the opportunity to meet the Grinning Knight himself." So again, it's one of those things where it's like she wanted to go because she's been told about his greatness from like a young age. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna move this over a little bit so that it's not like directly behind my head, and you can probably get a little bit better view of the work there. Um, yeah, that works. All right. So she hands him the letter, and she says, "My father gave it to me himself. He told me to make sure to hand it directly to Oscar himself." And Oscar looks at it and he says, "Well, that's a seal, so I know this is like official business. This is something that's meant specifically for me." So he starts going through and reading the letter, and she's kind of going through and she's just like not even thinking about it. She's like, "You don't mind if I stay here for the rest of the day, right? Like, you don't mind if I," because again, she's kind of like that noble style where it's like doesn't really think about or consider what other people think. It's just, this is what I want. So because this is what I want, everyone should be okay with this happening. So I'd like to see your house and stables. Do you have the Landsmere, the stone horse? Um, and then she kind of is like, so what direction is your house in? I want to see the trophies that you have. And he says, hold on, Madeline, can you come over here for a moment? And he kind of, just to kind of like slow her down from just kind of like jumping into a barrage of extra stuff. He calls her over so that he can actually have a little bit of a conversation with her. And with this, this is a lot of exposition that's going to come up. And so because there was a lot of exposition, I kind of wanted to have a little bit of like comedy to kind of break it up. And so we had the Knight of Stone filling up a jar of water. And so he's supposed to be taking that to the horses to give them water. And so Madeline says, "Well, what does the note say?" And he says, "Oh, it's a quest." She asks, like, "Is it a quest? Do you need to fight some kind of monster?" And so we see the Knight of Stone. Well, he's still a child. He still does have the strength of a man. This is a jug of just like water that's now he's got to carry. So he's having a little bit of trouble there. And Oscar just says, "Your father has requested that I keep an eye on you for the time being. He'll be negotiating with powerful magic wielders and worries about your safety." And we see kind of like Oscar that is now kind of starting to struggle just a little bit with that as he's like trying to keep it from tipping over or smashing on the ground because it's a clay urn. And she says, "Does it say for how long? What about my lessons?" And Oscar replies, "Well, there's no indication of how long, but these can take a while, depending on the kingdom's position with them. Also, your lessons will be conducted here." And she says, we see that Oscar's actually, or not Oscar, we see the Knight of Stone has actually been able to get a hold of the urn, so he's not really having any issue there. He's just like kind of sighing in relief. And Oscar says, "Unfortunately, I received a request earlier today, and I need to go and meet the client." And Madeline says, "Can I come?" And Oscar's just kind of like, "No, you would be bored anyway, and you still need to get set up in one of my guest rooms. So I will leave you in the care of my aspiring page and possible squire, the Knight of Stone." So we kind of see him like he's like, "Okay, like I've gotten a hold of this. I should be good." And he starts heading off towards the stable to feed or to water the horses. And then as we kind of go on, there's a very quick, surprising shout of his name, Floyd, and he turns to look and he says, "What?" They're like, "Huh?" And then he accidentally kicks one of the posts, drops the urn, and it just smashes all over the floor. So he was struggling with it before, managed to catch it, managed to stabilize it, and he goes, oh no, like what have I done? Like, you know, I've like done this horrible thing of like dropping his urn on the ground and smashing it, and um, this is the first impression that Madeline gets of him, and she's just like, oh, really? This is the person? Just to kind of give that initial like look of like, really, this is what I've got to deal with. Because again, the whole princess mentality and that kind of stuff. So, as we see, he starts like picking it up and says, you know, like I can fix it. And he's like got two obviously wrong pieces, and he's trying to like smash them together. And he says, you know, I know this was your precious urn, because that was something that he was told. And Oscar just says, you know, just come over here. We'll worry about the urn later. And he goes, okay, like he's still feeling bad about it. And Madeline, with that classic princess style attitude, is like, I don't really want to deal with this. This is the person that I'm going to be left in the care of. And so Oscar just kind of comes out and says, like, I need to go and be in contact about a quest, and I need you to look after Madeline. If you do well, I'll accept you as a page and begin training you to become a squire. So this is kind of meant to show that there's actually a reason why Oscar kind of wants, or Oscar wants him to do well in this specific task, and it's to make sure that Madeline is taken care of. So, of course, the Knight of Stone is like, you can count on me, sir. Like, I've got this. I can do it. And Madeline is just like, ugh, I've got to deal with this now. So we have Oscar just kind of telling the Knight of Stone to like just kind of go clean up the pieces of the urn and get Sten the horse some water. I will be leaving in about an hour. And so he says, yes, sir, Sten will be ready. And we then kind of like go over to where Cecil is, the driver. And he says, I assume you have all of her stuff, because he would obviously not just send her with nothing but the clothes on her back and her one pouch. And Cecil actually does have some stuff for her. So let's see here. That's the full chapter is about 20 pages long. So he says, yes, sir. Lord Argave said everything she should need has been packed. And he just holds out a small little satchel. And he said, untie the ribbon, flip the bag inside out, toss it into an empty room, close the door, count to 10, and all the items should be in the room. It's just like, kind of like the classic bag of holding thing, where it's like, like open up the bag, flip it inside out, and everything that's in the bag should just come out like on the floor. So Cecil does also add, it might be a little unorganized in my experience though. So Oscar then takes Madeline and says, come on, Madeline. I have a room next to Floyd's you can use. And she says, how long will you be gone for? And he says, I'll be leaving in an hour, and it'll take me an hour to travel and have the meeting. So 4 hours or so. Just kind of giving like a rough description of like how long she's going to be gone, or he's going to be gone for. So this is about the amount of time that they're going to be more or less alone in his estate. So he ends up having to basically take all the stuff out of the room, and he says, this should be this will be your room. Give me a moment to move the furniture into storage. She says, well, you know, like, it seems a little small. She's used to having something larger. Again, princess style attitude. And then he takes the time, he moves everything out. He says, this should be the last of it, so let's get the room filled with your stuff. She says, okay. So he unties the bag, flips it inside out. He says, here goes. And he tosses the bag into the room, and he starts counting 1, 2, 3, and then there's just a whole big racket inside. And he's just like, well, that doesn't sound very good. So Cecil did say that it was going to be a little bit disorganized. But then we kind of come into the next page here. Let me go ahead, pull it over. All right, she says, it shouldn't be too bad. Cecil said it would be disorganized, and it's just like a room just full of crap, just full of stuff, all of her stuff, just all over the floor. A desk, a bed, you know, some books like that slammed into the shelves and knocked the shelves out, that kind of stuff. Just then, we've got the Knight of Stone, before he is the Knight of Stone, that comes up and he says, "Sir Knight, your horse is ready for you." And he says, "Perfect timing. You can help young Madeline get her room organized while I have my meeting." And she kind of comes back, and again, she's in that noble mindset of, like, what are you talking about? She goes, like, what do you mean, help me? And why him? Can't your servants just get my room situated? I want to go and look around, because she, just arrived to this place. She wants to explore. She wants to see, because the estate is like right next to a forest. So she wants to go out and just kind of like look around different places and see different things, and just kind of like look around the rest of his house, just kind of see like what's all there. So she doesn't really want to be like cooped up in this room for the next 4 hours, as she's like having this guy kind of help her out when she should just have the servants kind of start taking care of it. But this is kind of when she starts kind of getting a little bit of a wake-up call, because even though Oscar again is nobility, he says, "Young Madeline, I don't know if you noticed, but I do not have servants." And she goes, "What? No servants? How will I get food? Who's going to help me get ready when I wake up?" Because she's never had to do anything for herself, because she's, again, that spoiled noble who's never had to worry about, like, what am I going to do? Like, who's going to get me ready? Who's going to, get all my stuff situated? And then she points at the Knight of Stone here and says, "And how is he going to help me? That furniture must weigh more than twice that what he does." Again, as a, like, 6-year-old weighing maybe, 50 pounds? I'm not sure how much, like, children weigh. But Oscar comes back and says, "Well, he may be small, but he's almost as strong as an adult already. And if your father sent you to me, he intends for you to learn how to take care of yourself. Now I suggest you two get started on getting your room cleaned." So the Knight of Stone is just kind of like, "Yeah, I guess I'll do it," as this is the first time that Madeline has ever really had someone be stern with her, be more like you need to, like, understand that this is not going to be your way 100% of the time anymore. And so she's now kind of a little bit disillusioned with the fact that someone was actually stern with her, rather than just kind of like kowtowing to her every whim. So then we kind of come back to when they're kind of having a conversation as to, he's just wondering, like, why does she have so much stuff? Why does she have all this stuff when he himself doesn't really need as much? And she says, "Well, don't touch my stuff." And he's kind of taking that literally, where, how am I going to help you if I cannot touch any of your things? And she says, "You put the furniture where I tell you. Like, don't touch my items. Just put the furniture where I tell you to put them." And then she says, "I'll take care of the things that need to be organized and stowed," because she has her own method. She has her own way of doing things. And she's kind of like at that point where it's like, I want things done specifically my way and only my way. There's no other room for interpretation or mistakes or anything like that. So she's kind of showing that she's not only someone who thinks that she's better than other people, she's also someone that thinks that because of her station, she's actually, again, above them as well. So she just tells him, push that desk against the wall. And then she's like putting her books into the bookshelf, and she says, like, the theory of advanced magical application, the theory of advanced magical implement creation, so just to show that she's not only studying magic, but she's also very, very good at it, because she's actually in the more advanced stuff. And then we take a look, and we actually see that everything's been kind of like set up nice and orderly. The room looks much, much better than what it did. And she goes, that took a while, and I think it looks pretty good, but now I'm hungry. And the Knight of Stone says, well, we were supposed to have rabbit for dinner tonight, but we didn't go hunting today. So, again, this is supposed to be something that's more supposed to be for training for the Knight of Stone, because this is supposed to be something that he learns how to go out and hunt and do that kind of stuff. But the twist on this is that actually he is very proficient at hunting already, because when he was living with his mom alone, he actually did hunting. He actually went out and he actually did this stuff. So he's actually the one that's a little bit more knowledgeable about this, because he's had to do this already, even as a young child. And he kind of like understands like how hunting works and like what to do. So he's just kind of talking a little bit about um, how they were supposed to go hunting, but they haven't gone hunting yet, but it's probably going to be too late. And Madeline says, Rabbit, I haven't had Rabbit in so long, because it's not really something that someone as like a noble person would have. And so she would have like a fond memory of it. But he says, well, we don't have any. She says, well, you hunt for it, right? So let's go on a hunt. Let's go do a hunt. Let's go hunt some rabbit. And he says, but I'm not supposed to go out into the forest alone, especially not this late, as we kind of see the sun kind of starting to crest over the rest of the forest and start to kind of get low in the sky. And she says, well, if I go with you, then you won't be going alone, right? With like this smug attitude of like, well, I found a technicality around the rule, so I don't really have to like follow that specific rule of like not going out alone. But if I'm with you, you're not alone, right? So he says, I don't know. And then she says, well, don't you think Sir Oscar would be impressed? And he says, well, because obviously that's something that he wants to do, because he wants to impress the Grinning Knight, because if he impresses the Grinning Knight, he'll take him on as a squire, because right now he's just a page. So he has like a reason to want to do it, and he's having someone tempt him into doing something that he's not supposed to as well. But he's gonna eventually just kind of like agree to it, because it does have something that he wants in it. So he says, okay, I'll go get the hunting equipment, meet me out front. And she goes, okay, I'll grab my bag. So he goes, he's digging through a chest and he's grabbing a whole bunch of stuff. As she grabs her bag and she says, looks like I have everything. And he says, hey, I've got everything. She goes, well, where's the bow? And he goes, well, I can't really use a bow, but I'm really good with a sling. It's much easier to pick up and throw a rock than use a bow anyway. Just kind of like, again, at this early stage, like tying him back to stones and rocks and, like the earth and things like that. So he's not really like picking up the bow. He's picking up, just a rock sling. He's just going to grab a rock and just sling it at, whatever animals when he's going hunting. So this kind of gives him, again, more of like a tie specifically to earth and like the natural, the natural like feeling of, well, like I'm good with throwing rocks, just that kind of stuff. So, but of course, having someone that can't use the stereotypical bow and arrow to go hunting doesn't really sit well with Madeline. So she goes, let's just go. Of course he can't use a bow. And as they start walking, a lot of noise is getting made. So he says, we won't be catching anything if you keep making all this noise. And she goes, how do I know it's not you making the noise? Because again, she doesn't have to take responsibility for anything with that noble style attitude. And he says, look, just try to avoid all the fallen leaves or bushes and we should be fine, okay? So, and it's just kind of showing that she's just like walking through like dried leaves and things like that. And she's obviously the one causing a lot of the issue. Whereas he knows specifically to avoid that stuff, and so he's not causing the noise. And so, but as she's looking down, she notices something. And this kind of, again, points back to a little bit more of the magical nature, because we haven't really seen that as of yet within the story time so far. So we've seen, kind of like medieval style of like doing things, hunting for food, all that kind of stuff. But we haven't actually seen like the magical elements of it. So we actually kind of take a look here, and we actually see that she notices like a small rock with a sigil carved into it, and she says, "What's that? I can feel magic coming from it." And this is obviously not something that Floyd's ever really worried about, and so he's just like, "I don't know. You'll need to ask Sir Oscar. For now, you need to stop talking so we can find a rabbit." So he's getting annoyed because she doesn't know that you can't just be out talking and causing a bunch of noise and doing a whole bunch of stuff to frighten off creatures. And so he's walking, he's looking around, and she's just kind of pouting at this point because now she's out. It's kind of getting dark, and so he quickly throws a hand up as he hears something out in the brush, and he's like reaching down to grab a rock, and he's swinging his sling, getting ready to toss the rock at it. And we're kind of starting to see like the actual like, I know how to use this, I know like what I'm doing kind of the situation. So he's not like entirely useless, he just has like a different set of skills, and he's actually good with those skills. So we can actually kind of take a look at the next page where he throws the sling, throws the rock, and the rabbit yelps, and she just immediately sees that it's running away, and she's like, "You missed. You didn't get it with a single shot." But of course, he's throwing it into a bush, so he's not really 100% sure where it is. And he says, like, "It's not running straight. I hit its leg. It won't get far. Let's just go after it." So now they have the opportunity to catch a rabbit, and so she's saying it's getting too well. He says it's getting too dark. We're gonna lose it. She says, "Hold on, I have a glow rod." And so the glow rod is supposed to be like a root that you like kind of crack like a glow stick, and it like has like a very small like glowing effect that you can kind of use to like light your path. And he says, "Good, it's heading that way." And so they're kind of like continuing their pursuit, trying to like go after it, trying to catch the rabbit. So we're kind of starting to get into the end here as we start to see that the Night of Stone Floyd here is much, much faster at running than she is, because she's having trouble keeping up. And so he hears the brush kind of rustling, and so he just grabs a rock, and he's just like, "I just got it," and he just like throws it, he just chucks the rock into it. And she asks, "Did you get it?" As he just kind of has like this like dumbfounded face as he realizes that what he hit might not be the thing that he thought he was hitting. So we actually kind of see here that he says, "No, someone else beat me to it," and it has like a wolf with a big old knot on his head to show that the wolf was actually what had gotten hit with the stone. And this startles Madeline as she sees like the wolf, and she ends up dropping her glow stick, which cracks the stick and breaks it. And so now there's a wolf that's howling, and we've got other wolves that are howling out in the distance. So now we've kind of got a little bit of a situation where now they're in the woods alone with a wolf, and they've got stuff that's kind of going on, because now they don't have any light, they don't have any ways to actually like make their way through the darkness. And he kind of steps in front of her because just to show like his ideals, responsibility, and kind of what he's looking to accomplish, which is he's trying to protect her. And so he just says, like, "Madeline, just stay behind me so I can protect you, so I can keep you safe." So he's like showing that even from a young age, he's like taking responsibility of the situation and actually like doing what he can to do what he was asked, which was to protect her. And so she just like gets up and bolts, and she's just like, someone that's panicked, doesn't know what to do. And so she's just like running into the middle of the forest, and she's reaching in and she's like fishing in her bag for something when she's confronted by 3 wolves, and she launches up a spell into the air to, well, this was supposed to be something that was like kind of given to her by her father, just in case like she was like ever lost in the city, she got herself like in trouble like in the city, like she would fire this rod up into the air, and it was supposed to be so that whoever was looking to find her, or whoever like was a guard or something, could come and take care of her. but she's in the middle of the forest and she's just acting on reflex, and so she's doing what she was told to do, which is to fire the rod into the air. But she's in the middle of the forest, so it's not like it's not like there's a whole bunch of people that are out there that can really come out to save her. And we have the final panel where the wolf is kind of we're kind of got the to be continued panel where the wolf is making a lunge. So we kind of see that she's alone here. She's like scared, and she's not really sure what to do. She has no survival instincts because, again, noble person doesn't really have a lot of life experience. Can probably maneuver, social situations much better. Can probably like talk to, other noble people very well. But when it comes to like being actually like out in the woods, she's showing her weakness here. And I think it's always good to have a character that is good at certain things but is also bad at other things, because we've already established earlier that she's very good at magic. She's very good about thinking about like ways in a magical way. But when it comes to practical application of like being in a dire situation, she struggles, and that's supposed to be something that she works through. Because I mean, if we take a look back at when she was surrounded by the bandits, she wasn't freaking out. She wasn't like, again, this is like in the future, but she wasn't freaking out. She wasn't like fumbling, and she wasn't like, I don't know what to do. Like I've got no clue. And so it kind of goes to show that she's like overcome this inability to like act in like a dire situation, because she's calm, collected. She pulls out the orb. She's like, I got what I was looking for. She activates the magic and repulses the two guys away from her. So it's just like something where she has an initial weakness, but they can eventually grow beyond it. They can eventually grow out of it. And just like how the Knight of Stone kind of shows that he's kind of clumsy, and he's kind of like learning more about the world because he doesn't really know a lot. It's also one of those things where eventually he becomes someone who becomes very dependable, and he has his own strength of like knowing how to hunt, knowing how to go through and do things, knowing how to like get certain things done. And each of these things are supposed to like compile so that the characters actually have more depth to them. Because if we start with just like these perfect characters that are completely strong, we end up with something that just kind of gives us someone with like nowhere to grow, nowhere to like advance in, or nowhere to become more knowledgeable. And that kind of ends the first chapter here. We do have a second chapter, but that was actually never directly published, like even on the YouTube channel or Just Plain Manga, because with that I had opened up a Patreon. Just Plain Manga never really caught on as much as I would have liked it to, and because I'd opened up a Patreon for it to where I could continue working on like these stories and things like that, to make it to where like I could have some form of income that I could go back and continue paying my artist through. But just the way that things worked out, I kind of ended up in a bad financial situation to where I could no longer pay the artist, just because I had to kind of go back to working part-time instead of being able to work full-time. But go ahead, we'll close that one out. All right, but we do actually have a character that does show up in the next chapter here, and that's the mother. I called her Nira, again, working name, but this was the mother of the Knight of Stone, and she was supposed to be someone that could like encase her entire body or turn her entire body into stone, because she was the favorite of the favorite of the earth. And she was more like a cleric. She was more like someone that was gifted divine powers, and she used that to, again, turn her body into stone, control and manipulate stone as well. And she also had a lot of different specific jewelry that she really liked to wear. And the reason why she had all this jewelry was because the father of the Knight of Stone, before he left, he would always send her things. He would always give her jewelry and things like that, so that we could kind of see that he loved her to the point where it wasn't just something where he would, express love through talking and words and things like that, but he would also like give her like very like expensive gifts. But the thing is that he never really bought these were all things that he could make. So he would actually make things that were specifically from the elemental plane of earth. And what that meant was that Earth is different on the material plane than what it is in the elemental plane. In the elemental plane of Earth, you have living stone. Living stone is basically where you have active, willful stone that can manipulate, rearrange itself because it has active souls living within the stone. Whereas Earth, or the material plane that everyone lives on within the world, that's called dead stone. And the reason why it's called dead stone is because the souls no longer really exist in the earth that's within the material plane anymore, because it doesn't have direct access to the elemental plane. And since it doesn't have access to the elemental plane, the souls eventually, they become echoes of themselves, and they no longer have like the vibrancy and the ability to manipulate, control, or even change the way that the land is structured. So because of that, when he creates these gems can actually grow. They can actually become other things, and it's meant to demonstrate that he's creating something for her that is not only beautiful, but something that is actively alive, something that actively has a will of its own. And then there's also truly dead stone, which is truly dead stone is stone that basically has nothing left in it. It cannot be manipulated, it cannot be altered, it cannot be changed by anything, even outside forces. And that's because truly dead stone no longer has any soul left in it. It's completely been emptied out, hollowed out. There's nothing left in it. But truly dead stone is not something that really appears very much within the world, because the world still has echoes of stone and things like that. Typically, like, soul has to be taken out of an element in order for it to become truly dead. Once it's truly dead, then it can no longer regain soul. It can never have anything else put into it. And again, it can't be shaped, broken, changed, reformed, anything. It becomes just a solid mass of unchanging existence. It no longer has anything that can be done or altered with it. And that does come into play later on, but that's like much later into the story. And it does kind of come into play specifically with the father. I don't have anything for the father because we never got deep enough into where the father would be anything more than just kind of like a conversation piece, anything more than just someone who's referred to, which Nira does specifically talk about the father and about how much he loves him, and that he sends letters and he always is like in contact. It's just he can't physically be there because it's dangerous for him, because he can't fully control his power. So this was just, I guess we'll just kind of have this as a little bit of a shorter stream today, just because I don't really want to go too much into other stories, which, as we saw in Just Plain Manga, that these are all different stories that I had kind of worked on. And I did also work on a second chapter for this one as well. And I don't know, like, I always thought that, you know, the stories have like a good foundation and a good starting point. The problem is, it's just that it was never really big enough to really show or really kind of make this stuff really well known. The Patreon page has been taken down for a while now, but yeah, I really miss working on this stuff, because this was kind of the thing that I wanted to really kind of work on initially. And this is actually one of the reasons why I started the first YouTube channel, the Just Plain Manga, was because this was meant to kind of be a way that I could kind of do something that I enjoyed, because I started this back like right around 2020, which is when I kind of started a lot of this. And it was like just before COVID had hit, and like just after I had been hospitalized for my heart transplant. So it was something that I like was thinking about working on, just because I couldn't really physically do a lot of work immediately after the transplant, and I was technically considered disabled for about 2 years after the transplant, so I was getting disability, and I wanted to kind of do something that was a little bit more artistic, because when I started working, and basically like whenever I was working, I've always worked kind of like part-time jobs, or even like minimum wage jobs and that kind of stuff. And it's because like, like my parents, they moved around a lot, and I kind of got, just kind of like pulled around with them, um, because I didn't really want to be like in a place where, so for example, when I became 18, we were living in Tennessee at the time, but that's not where, like my grandparents were or anything like that. That was just like where my family kind of ended up at the time. So my family was moving to Kentucky, and they were like, you can come with us, or you can stay here and try to make things work for yourself. And at that time, I had just like broken up with the person that I was dating with for like 3 or 4 years, and so I was like, yeah, like I need a fresh place to go. So we went back to we went to Kentucky. Only stayed there for about 2 years. I was thinking about trying to join the military again, um, but that didn't really pan out the way that we wanted it to, because just didn't work out. But after about 2 years, my family's like, all right, we're going back to California. And I was like, all right, well, California, good place to go to get stuff, get artistic stuff kind of going and started. So I went with them back there. And then I actually started school. I actually started going to school because the big thing that I really wanted to do was actually I wanted to go to Japan. I was raised in Japan, or raised in Hawaii, from the time I was like 7 years old until the time I was 16. And I saw that a lot of the culture that I really liked that kind of goes on in Hawaii was directly from Japan. So I was like, I want to go to Japan. I want to go see what it's like. I want to go there, and I want to see, everything. I want to go, interact with the people. I didn't want to learn the language, and I could have learned like a little bit of the language in high school, but my parents were like, no, we're going back to the mainland. Like, you're never ever going to use Japanese. And then I went to Japan twice. So I was like, yeah, I really could have used that Japanese, but because that was actually a language I was actually interested in. And they were like, no, you're learning Spanish. And I remember nothing from Spanish at all. So yeah, I ended up like learning a language that I wasn't really super interested in. We went back to the States. I ended up going to Japan. That's actually where I had my first heart failure. And so I had to come back, and it took a couple of years, and then I managed to get well, it took about 8 years, and then I got a transplant opportunity popped up, and we took it. And then 6 months later, COVID happens. Once COVID happens, I mean, I really couldn't work, really couldn't do much. I was on immunosuppressants, so I was under extra pressure for COVID and everything. So couldn't really like go out and do what I wanted. Couldn't go out and have the things that I wanted to do. So I was like, well, I can make comics. I can I can write stuff. I just don't have the artistic talent for it. So I just can't like draw for myself. But I have been thinking about possibly taking this stuff and possibly putting it through AI. I mean, I already had someone, like I hired and paid someone $150 a page to actually go through and draw all the stuff out. So if I want to go back and I want to like style change it with AI, I don't really think that's not the same as me like going through AI to create it to begin with. It's something that I've already had created, something that I've already been working with, and it's just kind of taking it and giving it kind of a little bit of like a style change. Just keeping like most of the same stuff, but changing like because like this is supposed to be like more like dark gritty fantasy, and I feel like a lot of the stuff just kind of feels a little bit too bright, too like lacking in like shading and darkness and contrast and that kind of stuff. So because of that, I do want to kind of like take it back and just kind of like redo some of this stuff with AI, just to kind of give it that dark look, that feeling of this is supposed to be like dark fantasy. This is supposed to be something that really provides an opportunity for the darkness to kind of creep in. Sorry, I'm not used to really talking this long. It's been an hour and a half that I've been talking straight, but yeah, I do miss working on this stuff, and I do miss kind of working with the artists, because fantastic guy, very, very nice guy, but unfortunately, just with the way things kind of went out, kind of couldn't do it anymore. Lost a lot of funding and that kind of stuff from losing a lot of my a lot of my hours by having to go to part-time work versus being able to work full-time. But sometimes that's how life kind of does it to you. But that's why I decided to switch over to YouTube and streaming and stuff like that. And that's because I'd really like to be able to do something that is a little bit more creatively focused or a little bit more artistically focused. Because I did go to college and I did get a degree, but it was because I wanted to make video games. I wanted to make things that people got to enjoy and things that people got to interact with and really kind of play and do things for themselves. But it's kind of the way things kind of worked out. Just I've always been busy. I've always been doing other stuff. I've always been kind of like running around. Because if I wasn't in California, I was in Japan, and then I went back to California, and then I went to another place, so like on the East Coast, and then I went back, and then I went to Japan again, and then I came back again, and it's just like I'm constantly moving too much, and so I did apply for a couple of video game creation positions for like writing, doing that kind of stuff, but never really heard anything back or never really found anything. But I mean, I've got a lot of ideas and a lot of like worlds and stuff that I've created. I've actually been like running through a lot of it with just like stuff like ChatGPT, just to kind of like give me feedback on like, does this work? Does this not work? Is this something that should be pursued? Something that needs a little bit more time to like function or get better and things like that, just to kind of like stress test a lot of the stuff that I've been working on. And it seems like a lot of the stuff that I've been working on is pretty good, but it's one of those things where it's like, if you don't really have kind of like the visual for it, it's kind of hard to get people to really kind of see like what you're working with. And I think that like a lot of this stuff is actually rather good. The only problem is that just the style needs to be changed a little bit, just kind of like make it a little bit darker, a little bit grittier, a little bit, you know, something that more reflects the world itself, because I think that a lot of the stuff is just kind of like, it's a little bit too bright. So we'll take a look at that and see. Maybe I'll take like one of these and I'll run it through AI style, change it up a little bit, just see kind of like how it looks and how it works, and maybe we'll come back to this a little bit later. But yeah, this is basically kind of a dead channel at this point, because the last time I think I posted anything here was like 4 months ago, so that was in like July, and that was the first chapter of the Knight of Stone, or not the Knight of Stone, the first chapter of the Mass of Power, which was like that's like the more hero kind of side, where it's more like a modern day hero kind of thing. But yeah, I miss doing a lot of this stuff. It's kind of something that, again, I was doing it for like 2.5 years or so. No, longer than that. I was doing that before I went. Like I was like making the worlds like before 2020, but the actual like hiring of the artists didn't come until like 2022, 2023, like around there. And when I started trying to actually like get this to go, but it just didn't work out. Just didn't turn out the way that I really wanted it to. But definitely something that I would like to kind of come back to at some point. But for now, we're doing games, streaming, that kind of stuff. So I've got a lot of stuff that I'm really working on and trying to get done, but we'll just see how it kind of works out. Hopefully I can come back to this at some point and kind of, because I do still want to make games. I still do want to make like these kind of stories and stuff, and have people like able to like interact, which is actually kind of why I like streaming a bit, because like whenever I do have like a chat or something like that, I can like kind of have something to engage with. That's more than just like what I'm directly doing. I mean, that's like one of the things I've always enjoyed was like when I was a kid, video games were just like my way of like being able to have something that was constant, because even when I was a kid, my family was moving around, and I would make friends and then we'd move away, and then I would make other friends and then I would move away, and I would make other friends and then we'd move away. So video games are just kind of like a constant of like, you know, I can always go back and I can play the N64 if I wanted to. I think I still have my N64 from back in the day. Um, but yeah, like I could always go back and do things like that. So it was always something that really allowed me to truly enjoy just, you know, having something that I could interact with personally that didn't require other people to really be actively engaged with. I did try reading and stuff, but reading it's not super interactive. You can't really do much with a book besides read it. I did really enjoy like choose your own adventure books, but never really enough of those because like it was just one of those things where it's like like you read, you like flip to different pages, and um, I don't know, man, just like going from page 1 to page 48, back to page 4, back to page like 34, back, and then like you're just like flipping back and forth. It's like a little bit too much. But you can't just like go through and just like read through the entire book because because like you miss like the context of like how you got there, what you were doing, and so it's one of those things where like games give you the opportunity to like move forward in a single progression, whereas like read your own adventure you just flip flop back and forth too much. But that'll do it for today. Just kind of wanted to go through and just kind of discuss one of the manga that I had worked on before, and just kind of talk about um, the world and kind of like what happens in it, and the different characters and kind of what it all means. But thank you all for watching. Really appreciate it. Please feel free to like, follow, subscribe, all that stuff on wherever you're watching. We will be doing another stream tomorrow, and we're actually going to be starting Mass Effect Legendary Edition tomorrow. So feel free to jump in there because we're going to be doing Mass Effect 1 all the way through Mass Effect 3. I have completed Mass Effect way too many times, more times than I would like to admit. So yeah, we're going to be playing through that. I am thinking about doing a warp or a specific biotics build, just because that's like the closest thing to a mage that we can get, and it's one of the like least explored that I've ever really done. I really do like the game, but it's just one of those things where like so let me see here. I've got what 100 and let me take a look here. I've got 112 of the achievements on Steam out of 127. There's only a few things I have left to do that I have not done in that game already. Because I don't sit there and I don't trophy hunt, I don't trophy grind. I basically play the game until I'm done with it, and then just kind of drop the game. But yeah, we'll be doing another stream tomorrow, 2 to 6 p.m. Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Come by, see how I want to play it. I don't know if I'm going to do a Renegade run or a Paragon run. Because I did a Renegade run not too long ago. Which Renegade run is actually kind of difficult to get the good ending for Shepard, where like he survives at the end, going the Renegade route. But maybe we'll try that again. It is just kind of funny, just kind of being an a-hole to everybody, doing a lot of unnecessary damage and pissing people off and that kind of stuff. But then again, I do like being kind of like that like good hero style character, where you do things where you don't kill people if you don't need to, and you try to like save as many people as you possibly can, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that'll do it for today. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a good night.